Welcome to Gold Coast Insider, where we bring you business insights, stories, opportunities, and forecasts from movers and shakers across the Gold Coast. I'm your host, Estella Rodiguero. I'm CEO of Regional Development Australia Gold Coast. Welcome to today's episode. We're exploring one of the most critical issues facing Queensland's small businesses today: cybersecurity. Small businesses are the backbone of our economy, yet they remain some of the biggest targets for cybercrime. Joining us today is Kimberley Roberts-Salee, Program Educator for the Cyber Wardens program. In this conversation, we'll dive into what the Cyber Wardens program offers, why cybersecurity needs to be a priority for every Queensland small business, and how the new partnership with the Queensland Government is making free, practical training accessible across the state. So don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe for more episodes. Welcome, Kimberley. It's great to speak to you this morning.
Thanks so much for having me, Estella. I'm thrilled to be here.
What a great program. Let's start off with if you can tell us all about Cyber Wardens, please.
Absolutely. So Cyber Wardens is an initiative of the Council of Small Business Organizations of Australia. So people might have heard it referred to as well as COSBOA. And the program itself is funded by the Australian government. So it's a free program, completely free for all small businesses. And it's developed with sole traders, small business owners, and small business employees in mind, to give them the tools that they need to be able to be safe online. So basically to be able to protect their business against cybercrime. We know that 43% of all cybercrime in Australia targets small businesses. So almost half of all cybercrime is targeted at small businesses. So that's why Cyber Wardens was developed. And really at its core, Cyber Wardens is developed in a really accessible language. So we do away with jargon. You don't need a tech background. It's really for people who don't have that basic knowledge to be able to confidently gain those skills. And of course, with the Queensland Government partnership, we're offering that to all Queensland businesses as well. So that is being rolled out across the state, and we have some webinars that we're delivering for Queensland businesses. The course itself is delivered online as online modules for anyone who wants to do it kind of self-paced, just on their laptop or on their phone at their own leisure. And we also have webinars that we run weekly and on-demand webinars as well, so that people can do those with that kind of interactive component. A lot of people we've noticed like to do the training with an educator. So people like myself and a few other people on our team deliver the program via webinar.
Right. And we'll get to some of the details further down so that people are aware of where they are, what they are, and how they can connect. But you've got some very scary statistics about cybersecurity for Queensland small businesses, which absolutely knocked me out.
Absolutely. And that's why one of the reasons why that collaboration with the Queensland government to start with. So Queensland, in the latest Australian cybersecurity report that the Australian Cybersecurity Centre releases every year, Queensland was the top state for cyber attacks. So they recorded the highest number of all types of cyber incidents across the country. So it's imperative for all, of course, small businesses across the country, but really for Queensland specifically, to make sure that they've got those skills in place to protect their business.
So are you finding that the most at risk is the small businesses, Kimberley?
Small businesses are a huge target for cyber criminals. And what we found is that a lot of small businesses think that they're too small. They're like, no,
Yeah.
I'm not attractive. Optus, Medibank, Qantas, those types of attacks that we hear of on the news. Small businesses think that cyber criminals are more interested in that end of the town. But really what we know is that because small businesses usually have less cybersecurity infrastructure, so their systems are usually easier to breach into. They often have fewer resources as well. So if that's whether that's financial or human resources, so there's fewer people in the team that are trained across cybersecurity, or that really just are there working on the tools. Small business owners and employees wear many hats, so often they're so busy that they'll miss those details that we can talk about a bit later in terms of those red flags. So all of that combined means that cyber criminals target those small businesses because they're just literally the lowest hanging fruit. So if you think of you're on a street and, a thief is walking on the street and just wants to go and rob a house, they're going to go to the house that's got the doors unlocked if everybody else's house is completely locked up. And that's literally what cyber criminals do. They're just opportunistic, and they will go to the lowest hanging fruit to make it easier for them.
How prevalent is cybercrime and how much does it affect small businesses?
So it's quite prevalent. So we know that from the Australian Cybersecurity Centre reports, we know that every 6 minutes an attack is reported in Australia, and that's just the reports. So what's really important to remember is, I don't know about you, Estella, but often I'll get a dodgy text message or an email that I know is a phishing email. I'll just delete it. I'm not going to report it. So all of those little things that we receive that we don't report, those are also cyber incidents or the beginning of a cyber attack, but we don't report them. So when we think of an attack being reported every 6 minutes, that's really just the tip of the iceberg, because there's a lot of other attacks that go unreported. And as I mentioned before, that 50 or nearly 50% of all cybercrime targeting small businesses means that it's really prevalent for small businesses, especially when we know that 95% of all cyber attacks involve human error. And that's where I like to say that cybersecurity it's not a tech issue, it's actually a human behavior issue. It's what we do online, it's the habits that we have or the habits that we haven't instilled yet, or the little things that we do that we think are innocuous that really put us at risk of cybercrime. So it's really important to make sure that we're trained into recognizing the signs, but also knowing what we need to implement in our business, and then making sure that our whole team knows if we work with other people in the business.
Right. So, what are some of the examples, I guess, of how they actually get into the business?
Yeah. There's there's 3 cybercrimes that are most common within the small business and those are business email compromise. So that's inbox break-in, essentially. That's exactly what it says on the box. It's when a cyber criminal essentially breaks into your inbox, and then from there, they're able to launch multiple other attacks. So if you think of everything that you have in your inbox, I don't know about you, you might have passwords that you've shared with people. You might have financial information for your business or for your employees. You might have business data. You'll have, of course, all of your emails and your likeness and your all of the correspondence that you've done. So once they're in there, they're able to use all of that to impersonate you, to impersonate your employees. They can intercept invoices that you've received either from suppliers or that you've sent to your clients, and they can replicate those invoices to make up a fake invoice that looks exactly like the real one. Then they'll change the banking details on there, and then from there, you receive the invoice and you just think that your suppliers changed their banking details, so you just pay the new bank account. And lo and behold, you're paying a cyber criminal instead of your usual supplier. So things like that. They can also, when you're sharing those passwords and when you're not being vigilant with your password, either the passwords that you've got on your accounts or sharing your passwords with people, once they intercept that, they can use that combination of username and password across multiple accounts, and then they're able to break into those accounts. So for example, if you use the same combination across everything, inbox, social media, banks, government, all of your other accounts, they'll use that combination. They do that in an automated way, so it's quite quick. And as soon as they hit the jackpot somewhere, they're able to breach into that account. So imagine if they breach into like your bank account, for example. That's a really easy one for them to. They've basically hit the jackpot. Once they're in the bank account, they can essentially transact as you would and just drain your funds if they're able to access your bank account. So those are some of the most prevalent cyber crimes that target small businesses. So it's really important to kind of be able to recognize the signs and what that looks like
So,
in
there's
terms.
there's different types as well, isn't there? There's ransomware,
Mm.
and there's malicious software, and that the malicious software is the ones where they can break into your credit card and your passwords. But what's ransomware and how prevalent? Because I had not really come across that.
Ransomware is a type of malware that essentially comes in the form of an attachment. So that's why we say one of the red flags that you should be able to recognize is when you receive an attachment that you're unsure of, that doesn't look like an image, that doesn't have that file extension like a JPEG or a PNG that we all recognize as being an image or a PDF. If it's got a file extension that looks different or looks unusual, that could be ransomware. So ransomware is essentially a type of malware, so a type of virus that they install on your device that will lock all of your data, so you won't be able to access any of your files or any of your data. And the term ransomware comes from the fact that they'll essentially request a ransom for you to have access back to your files. So that happens a lot in healthcare and in other industries where they hold a lot of really sensitive information. So healthcare is a big one, and any of the other, essentially any industry where you're holding credit card details or payment details, that's enough for cyber criminals to make that attractive to them.
So you've mentioned a couple of red flags, but what are red flags, the warning signs that small businesses should look out for when it comes to cybersecurity then?
So one of those, that attachment that I mentioned, is one of them. Another one would be especially when it comes to invoices. So I mentioned those fake invoices before. Anytime you receive an invoice that you're not expecting. So usually as small businesses, we have a good idea of the invoices or the cash flow coming in and out of the business. So if you receive an invoice that you're not expecting to receive from a supplier that you might not have worked with recently, instead of just, ticking off that invoice and just paying it off just to get it off your plate, just have a think. Like, did we work with them recently? Was it going to be 1,000 or was it going to be 10,000? Why are they sending me this invoice? And just make sure that you double check with the supplier before you pay it. And that goes hand in hand with those banking details. So often what they'll do is they'll replicate an invoice from a real supplier. So for example, you're receiving an invoice from your accountant. The invoice looks exactly the same, and they'll do it around the time that you would potentially be receiving an invoice from your accountant. So, around end of financial year or something. And the invoice will look exactly the same, but they'll change the banking details. And then what happens is often small businesses have the banking details saved into their accounting software. So let's say Xero or MYOB.
Hmm.
So they'll prompt you to update those details. And once you're prompted to do that, that's when that red flag, that alarm bell should start ringing. And before you do anything, you want to call your supplier directly. So call your accountant, find their phone number online, find their phone number on your phone. Don't use the one on the invoice because, again, they might have changed the invoice, the phone number on the invoice. And then double check with them whether they've changed their banking details before you do anything. So that's a huge red flag. Anytime this changes to a usual supplier, we want to make sure that we double check with our supplier before we do anything. And even, honestly, best practice, every time you receive an invoice, if you have time, check with the supplier. Just double check, just give them a quick ring and just double check the banking details, especially when we're talking about, pretty high amounts of money.
Mm.
So yeah, there's so those are some red flags. And another one, of course, as we know, but we kind of tend to forget sometimes, is anytime there's a lot of typos, kind of weird language in an email. If an email is coming from, for example, your boss, and you know what your boss sounds like usually, and it doesn't sound like them, they're asking you to do something weird, something secretive, not tell the rest of the team. Anytime, essentially, it doesn't feel right in your gut, that's a really good sense check. So just, if you get a good weird gut feel about it, always double check with the person. It's a few extra seconds.
Mm.
They're not going to think you're annoying because you might be saving your boss or your company thousands of dollars when we know that the average cost of a cyber attack is $50,000. For me, like, those extra seconds are short-term pain for long-term gain for everybody involved.
Oh, definitely. And what about, there's some other signs I think we mentioned earlier in our conversation, system slowdowns or crashes. So it's not always the obvious email, is it?
It's not. It might start with an email. It might
Oh,
start with a
okay.
link to click on or something to open, because often that inbox break-in will be at the source of all of those other
Okay.
attacks. So if they're able to get into your inbox, then they're able to use your name to impersonate you to your employees, or to impersonate your employees to you. So it often will start with an email, but not always. And yes, they might be able to infiltrate your system, sometimes through weak Wi-Fi practices. So if you're using public Wi-Fi, for example, it makes it a lot easier for cyber criminals to essentially hijack a session that you're on. So we tell people, if you're in a public place, I don't want to be scaremongering or fear mongering, but if you're in a public place and you've got access to either a VPN or to your own hotspot, try to log into something that's protected, a network that's protected, rather than the public Wi-Fi, because those public Wi-Fis have a lot more vulnerabilities. make it a lot easier for cyber criminals to breach into your system and your network. And then from there, yeah, they can launch other attacks as well.
Gosh, Kimberly, I mean, the amount of times when you travel around or you're
Right?
traveling overseas where
Yep.
it's just like, yes, I can use free Wi-Fi everywhere. It's probably not
I
something
always
we should
give
be.
that example just because I've done it as well myself a lot is being at the airport.
Mm,
And for some reason at the airport, you think that you're kind of in your own bubble
yeah,
and you think that nobody's looking at you or nobody's got their eye on anything other than their own stuff. But as soon as you've got your laptop open and there's people around, they can see what's on your screen. They can read what's on your screen. They can see you put in your passwords on your keyboard. So it's just really important to have an awareness of our surroundings when we're in a public place.
so what are some of the habits we have that have inadvertently made us vulnerable to cyber attacks? I mean, they're just so prevalent. It's
They
ridiculous.
are. The one thing that I would say, the one habit that I always say to people, the kind of like basic habit that I want people to start implementing in their business and in their personal life, to be really honest, is making sure that we have really good password hygiene. So, as we know, the password and the username combination is often where those breaches happen in the first place. So, if you're using password 123 on all of your accounts, it's really easy for a cyber criminal to basically just use password 123 with your username, Kimberley Roberts-Salee, and then just use password 123 until they hit the jackpot. So we tell people every single account that you use should have a long, strong, and unique password.
Right.
So no password 123, no pet name, unfortunately, no footy name. I know the Broncos won over the weekend, so any
Mm,
Broncos fans, we want to
yep.
make sure that we don't use Broncos as their passwords. We really want to make sure that we use essentially random characters, so at least 14, and that's across every single account. And then on top of that, we want to use multi-factor authentication. So
Right.
do you use that? Do you know what that is?
Yeah. Yeah. But
Yeah.
you can talk us through it. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so multi-factor authentication is that second layer of protection that is essentially often comes in the form of a code on your text messages or an app that you need to open. It's essentially verifying your identity in a second way to make sure that it's really you that's signing into the account. So if you've got a long, strong, unique password that's really hard to break into or to guess, coupled with that multi-factor authentication, that does make it virtually impossible for cyber criminals to break into an account. So I always tell people if you want to start somewhere and you're not sure where to start, because I know that this sounds really overwhelming, something that you can action right away is those passwords. And I've got 150, maybe 200 accounts online, so I'm not expecting everyone to go through 200 accounts as soon as they listen to this podcast. But what we want to do is start with those high value accounts. So your inbox, your bank account, your social media, your government accounts, and then work your way through. And then if you want to make sure that you store all those passwords in a way that's secure as well, you want to use a password manager, because I'm not expecting people to remember
I know.
200 random strings of characters. It's impossible. So a password manager will be your tool to use to make sure that all of your passwords are stored in an encrypted software. You only need to remember the one master password. That's all you need to remember, and everything is stored there. And often, password managers will also generate those passwords for you, so you don't have to think of those
Mm,
random combinations. They do it for you.
no,
So
definitely.
that's an actionable implementation that businesses can take right away and start making sure that they protect their accounts. And then you want to make sure that you update your software regularly. You want to make sure that you don't share those passwords with anyone else. You want to make sure that you pay attention when you're receiving requests
Mm.
to pay invoices or to click on links or anything like that. But the password is really kind of the basis of everything else.
So small businesses are really busy, like they're really under the pump. What what are small businesses doing currently that make them vulnerable? I mean, what are they doing? Because we are the state that's the highest
Mm,
cyber risk. What
it's
currently are they doing?
it's not what they're doing, and I'm always very careful when I talk about this because I don't want to victim blame. I don't want people to
Yeah.
feel like they're doing the wrong thing. the aim of Cyber Wardens is really to destigmatize cybersecurity for small businesses, so to make it feel less overwhelming. So it's more things that they're not necessarily implementing. And it's stuff like, we know that, of course, small businesses wear many hats, they're very busy, but it's also, they might not do those software updates that we talk about. They might not have also those infrastructure in place in their business to make those software updates automated. So you want to make sure that you automate software updates, that you don't snooze them. Often we see also that small businesses will share logins across multiple people on the team. So let's say they're using a software license for, let's say, for Adobe, and they're expensive. I get it. Software license is expensive. So you use one login for everybody on your team. But when you're doing that, you're exposing people on your team who, first of all, may not necessarily need all the access that software grants them. So they might not need all the admin rights. So you're exposing people on your team to files or to data that they might not necessarily need in their role. And it also makes it really hard if something happens to kind of pinpoint where it happened, what happened, because everybody's using the same software. So it does cost a bit more money, but if you're using a software license, you want to make sure that everybody who needs that license has their own login, has their own seat on the software.
So you've mentioned a few things that small businesses can implement. Let's talk about cyber warden training. Let's walk through what can they expect and what can they seek help with.
Yeah, so Cyber Wardens, as I mentioned at the top of the episode, is so it's free, it's practical training, and we've got a range of courses on our course catalog now. So what we usually recommend is for small businesses to start with our foundations course. So our foundations course is really those basics. It's recognizing those red flags that we talked about. It's making sure that we implement the software updates, the password, the multi-factor authentication. And then in our course catalog, we've got course level 1, which is a deeper dive into those foundational principles. Course level 2, which looks at the use of AI in our business. So AI is a hot topic at the moment.
Yeah.
I'm sure it is for you, and I'm sure it is for your stakeholders and people you talk to. So we talk about how to use AI safely, and also how to recognize AI-generated scams, because the scams don't necessarily change, but they become more sophisticated with AI as a tool for cyber criminals to craft those scams. So we talk about that side of things. And then we've got our level 3 as well, which is all about cyber fitness within the supply chain. So that one was released recently. And small businesses might not realize, but we're all part of a supply chain, whether we're, tier 1 contractor, whether we're the end client, or whether we're a small business supplier, we're all part of the supply chain. And when you're working with bigger clients like government or like critical infrastructure, those clients might have expectations of you as a small business to make sure that your business is secure. Because if you're the weakest link, if something happens to your business and it impacts your delivery, it impacts your turnaround time, it impacts your relationship with your clients or with your suppliers, everybody stands to lose. So in the level 3 supply chain course, we just go over legislation in Australia and how to make sure that you're not the weakest link in your supply chain. And all of those courses are online, and they're also delivered as webinars as well. So however you want to learn, there's a way for people to access them.
Right. And so the foundational one just helps the starting,
Yeah,
for people who are a bit overwhelmed, I guess, as well.
exactly. And we know that's what we hear the most about cybersecurity from small businesses. They just don't know where to start.
Yeah.
They kind of have the head in the sand mentality because they don't want to hear about it. It's too complicated. It's too overwhelming. So the foundations really makes it as accessible as possible. It's those basics, and it's making sure that you get that confidence and you go, oh yeah, it's not that complicated. And oh yeah, it's just my behavior that needs to change. I don't need to get all this complicated software. I don't need to get all this complicated coding on my website or anything. It's really just me and my team that need to be better skilled.
And I think what I like about it as well, Kimberley, is that you've had 15 years experience in small business. So you're delivering it in a language which is understandable.
Yeah, that's exactly
Oftentimes it
right.
goes over our head.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I've worked in many small businesses over my career. In fact, every work that I've done, every job that I've had has been in small businesses. So I understand the pain points. And I understand as well the lack of time, the lack of resources, and it needs to be short, sharp, and it needs to be actionable right away. We don't have time for a whole uni degree or, like a 8-week course. It needs to be something that we can do in half an hour, watch a webinar, do a course, and then go back to our business right away and implement some key actions to help us.
Mm. So you've partnered with the Queensland government. Why is this so significant?
So that's partnership or the collaboration with the Queensland government is one of it's the first state collaboration that we've done. So of course the program is delivered by the Australian government, but we are partnering with different states to be able to customize the content and to be able to talk to the residents of the particular states. So the Queensland government's collaboration has been the first one that we've done. It's been going on for a few months and it's been really successful. We've done some webinars that are targeted to Queensland businesses. We also do some themed webinars for different industries. So we've done one for the construction industry because the construction industry is one, as you know, I'm sure, one of the bigger industries in Queensland. We've got one coming up for the tourism industry as well, which is also a big industry in Queensland. So those ones are just more to make it more customized to those people so that they can relate to it better. We've got examples that are linked to their own industries.
Yeah.
And so we just deliver content for people to relate to it better. And so any Queensland businesses at any point, if they want to do any of the training, the place to go to is cyberwardens.com.au/QLD-GOV. And they'll find all of the training on that page.
Excellent. How often will training be delivered?
So the trainings is we've got weekly webinars that are up on the website where you can register, and those are live webinars.
Excellent.
They're every Tuesday at 12 p.m. Queensland time. And we rotate between foundations, level 2, which is Safe AI, and the supply chain one. So we alternate every week. And then we'll have a tourism or a industry-based webinar as well. But if you land on that page, you can also do the online course if you want. So if you don't have time on a Tuesday at 12 p.m. to do a webinar, you can go and just do the course. You can self-lead your education, and you don't necessarily need to register to the webinar. So we're trying to make it as accessible and as many different formats as possible.
So I'm going to pick your brain here for a minute, Kimberley.
Yeah, please.
Okay. What should I do if I click on a phishing link?
That's a good question. That's a question that we get quite often. And just to put into context, a phishing link for anyone who's not familiar is a phishing PH. It's not like fishing, especially in Queensland. I'm sure a lot of people relate to the fishing in the ocean. It's phishing PH, and those are links that look like they're coming from a legitimate website. So often it'll come from like your bank, the ATO, Facebook, big organizations, and they'll ask you to click on a link. Often it'll come with an urgent message. So if you don't log in and rectify the situation right now, your Facebook account will be closed.
Okay.
So you go in, you click on the link, you log into what you think is your Facebook account, but it's actually, you're basically providing your credentials, your login credentials to the cyber criminals. From there, they're able to use that combination across multiple accounts. So if you do click on the link, first thing to do is not to panic, and it can happen. And hopefully if you've clicked on the link, you've at some point realized that, oh, that's probably not a legitimate email. And if you haven't entered your login credentials, that's fine. If you have entered them, the first thing you want to do is go and change your passwords on that account right away. You want to change your passwords. You want to install multi-factor authentication so that if they try to log in again, they won't be able to because the password will be changed. And then you want to tell someone, if you've done it from a business account, you want to tell either your IT provider or your boss, your manager. And it's not shameful. It's just to stop the attack in its tracks. So the earlier we can report it, the earlier we can stop it, the earlier we can change our passwords, the less risk that it blows out. So yeah, it's just, don't panic. It is a bit stressful, but really if you go ahead and you change those passwords and then you let someone know, that should be a good way to go about it. And then it'll also be a lesson for next time to not click on those links when they come through.
On the back of that, is it sort of important for small business to have some sort of critical response plan?
Yeah. And that's something that we cover in our cyber fitness for the supply chain, but it's something that you need to at least know who to contact. And that's something that we have in our foundations course. We've got a list of all of the organizations that you can report a cyber attack to. You need to have a plan as to who to contact in your business and then who's going to lead the response. What systems will you need to either pause or what actions will you take? Will you update all your passwords? Will you let your clients know? Will you let your stakeholders know? And then you also kind of want to test that. It's like a fire drill. You know how we do fire drills in the offices and you have to go outside and stand? It's the same thing. Do a fake phishing email and see what happens. And then everybody can learn from it in a safe environment rather than in a real cyber attack environment. So yeah, having that plan in place is really important. We actually delve into that plan in quite a lot of detail in our Cyber Fit for the Supply Chain course.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess, is there legalities around, we now hold lots of information on people. We have CRMs, and should they get access to that? What's our legal standing on that? Like, what's our responsibility?
It depends on the size of your business. And we know that, for example, if your annual turnover is under $3 million, you're not necessarily bound by the Privacy Act. However, what we know as well is that any supplier that you're working with or any bigger client, if they are bound by that Privacy Act, essentially, they kind of expect you to be as well. So it's not, if you don't turn over $3 million, it's not a reason to say, oh, well, that doesn't apply to me. So we want to make sure that we are using the right amount of privacy for the data that we're maintaining of our customers, especially when it holds sensitive data. And we want to make sure as well that we're storing it properly, that we're not using it for any other purposes that what we're stating. So having a privacy policy in place is really important. And again, those legislation, I know it's a bit drier in terms of content, but in our Cyber Fit for the Supply Chain course, we do start with the legislation just so that everybody understands kind of what their responsibilities are within the larger landscape. And it's often, again, it'll be the expectations of your bigger contractors, your bigger suppliers. That might mean that even though you're exempt at a legal level, you might not be exempt as a partner level.
That's right. And reputational damage as well.
100%. Reputational damage is just as significant, if not more, than the $50,000 that we talked about that you might stand to lose, because reputational damage you might never recover from that. Whereas,
Exactly.
a monetary amount, yes, it can be devastating for some businesses, but at the end of the day, that doesn't impact your reputation, your mental health, your employees' mental health.
We get a lot of updates on our phones and on our computers. What actually happens if I keep clicking remind me later on updates?
I know that the
Which is
temptation
what
is
I tend to
high.
do.
I know, especially like, you're in a Zoom meeting or you're writing a proposal and you're really in the zone, and then that comes up and it really it messes with your flow. But every time you click snooze on a software update, your device is not updating with the latest security patches. And what we know is that if you're not, if a software company is releasing a security patch, is because they know that there's a vulnerability on their software that needs to be patched. If the companies know that, you can be sure that the cyber criminals know that as well. So they'll exploit those vulnerabilities on devices that haven't been updated. So I know, again, all those things that I mentioned, I'm very aware that they can be annoying. It's it's a few extra things that you have to do, but again, I always think of that $50,000. All the things that I could do or that a small business could do with $50,000. And again, it's just something that we need to get into the habits of doing. And the best way to do it really is just to automate those software updates. So I know on my phone, for example, they do it at night when my phone is charging. You can do that on your laptop as well. So if you turn your laptop off at the end of the day, those updates will automatically be installed as well. So it's just getting into the habit of doing it.
Right. So AI, it has just put a whole new slant on everything,
Yeah.
including how scammers scam. So can you talk us through, like, they can really fake our voices, can't they? Like, there's so much that we've got to look out for now.
That's probably where AI is really changing the game, is making being able to make those deep fakes and essentially really copying someone's likeness, not just by email but by their voice. It doesn't take a lot. They only need a few seconds of voice clips to be able to replicate your voice. So it could be your boss calling you and saying, can you transfer money? We need to transfer X amount into the business account right away. Can you do that? This is the bank account. And in fact, it's not your boss, but it's a cyber criminal. Same thing with deepfake videos. It doesn't take a lot of footage for them to be able to recreate your likeness. But what's encouraging is that at this time, at least, there's still some kind of giveaways that you're looking at a deepfake and not a real person. And it'll be that the natural flow of voice or the natural movements, hand movements. Sometimes there'll be a speech delay with the video and the mouth and the audio. So all of those little things are still red flags that we can look out for. But in saying that, again, we're very busy. We might not pay attention. So a good way to do it is if you receive a phone call from your boss and it's a deep fake, we tell people to come up with a code word. So it's going back to basics and having a code word that you use, and you can ask the person on the phone, oh yeah, before I transfer the money, what's the code word for the company or what's the code word for the team? If they can't come up with it, you know that it's not the real person. So it's really going back to kind of like analog solutions to make sure that we can decipher or identify those AI cyber criminals. But yeah, it's something that is going to become more prevalent, and where we'll just need to make sure that we're more educated and have a better way of identifying when these things come up.
So this is such an amazing, timely and important training that you're providing. The Cyber Warden training just sounds invaluable. Is it only open for small businesses? Could small businesses put their staff through it? Could the staff engage in this as well?
Absolutely. And we actually
Excellent.
recommend that because, as I mentioned before, with 95% of cyber attacks involving human error, it's all well and good if the owner's done it, but nobody else on the team's done it and they don't know how to recognize those red flags. So we encourage people to do it, to get all their team through it. We talk to HR teams and, encourage them to make that as part of the onboarding. And we know we've spoken to recruiters and we've spoken to HR professionals that have said to us, we've made this mandatory as our onboarding. So as soon as you start, you get all of your documentations, your policies, and you do the Cyber Wardens training, at least the foundations module, so that you've got that baseline education. So yes, absolutely, making sure that everybody on the team is across it, because we talk about, the weakest link in the supply chain, but it goes for our team as well. You don't want to have a weakest link on your team. So you want to make sure that everybody's got the same baseline level of education around cybersecurity.
Definitely. Such a good program and such a necessary and important program. And I guess up to now, small businesses may think, look, we're too small. They wouldn't bother about us. But you've just told us that it's the small businesses that are being targeted.
Yeah, all the more reason. It's just
Yeah.
that we don't necessarily hear about it on the news because it's not Qantas and it's not affecting your frequent flyer points, but it happens every day. And small businesses are the lowest hanging fruit for cyber criminals.
Right. Look, thank you so much, Kimberly. Look, I could just keep asking you questions because there really is a lot in this, particularly with AI now. But we do have to stop. Let's just talk about how people, again, because it's so important, how they can access the training and when is it available. And I will put it at the bottom of our release, and so we'll have access straight to it.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So if people go to cyberwardens.com.au/QLD-gov,
Yep.
and that will take them right onto the Queensland government page. So it will all be Queensland customized and responsive to Queensland businesses' needs and requirements. And then from there, they can pick the webinar that they want or the course that they want. Again, those webinars run every Tuesday at 12 p.m. Queensland time.
Excellent. And I guess from this point of view, also for businesses, they need to have a risk policy. This has to be part of their risk
Yeah.
policy.
Yeah.
Cybersecurity is part of your risk policy. You need to make sure that you're keeping abreast of it and updated with it. And this is a free service which allows that. So well done and thank you. It's been wonderful speaking with you today.
Thank you so much, Estella, for giving me the opportunity, and I hope that we can get more Queensland businesses into the program.
Certainly. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening today. For a complete list of podcast episodes and transcripts, go to rdagoldcoast.org.au/podcasts. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter.